Sierra Leone is witnessing what could be termed as a raging storm in the teacup. Unnoticeable and silent, but it is as deadly as a coiled viper, readying to strike. Unregulated and overlooked, Freetown is slowly becoming the capital city of smoke and other caustic and diabolic gases.
We must understand that within the context of climate change, the emission of CO2 is a big problem to the environment. And in the Sierra Leonean context, we might not be big polluters of CO2, but in our context, especially in the capital city, it's worrisome. We are seeing lots of avenues for the pollution of smoke and smudge. One, we're looking at factories, even though we don't have a lot of factories, but manufacturing in around the city, welding shops or businesses that use thermal generators are producing smoke. This might not be large, but they have their own effects to the environment. We also have cars, trucks. We see these trucks, they pass, they have lots of fumes of smoke, and this is also causing problem to the environment. And of course, we have illegal dump sites all around the city. And the general habit is setting fire to this. And because of the buildup of methane in some of these dump sites, it just catches fire and there's a lot of smoke. So this, as you've alluded, causes one, the heat stress that we are getting right now. The place is becoming hotter because there are lots of carbon dioxide.
The West African nation's greenhouse gas emissions are estimated at 5.859 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. Its NDC includes targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from 5% by 2025, 10% by 2030, and 25% by 2050.
We have the carbon monoxide as well, which fumes. It's causing health damaging effects for people who take in these kind of gases. That is leading to poor air quality, especially within the built environment. If you look in Freetown, the area where we have lots of poor air quality, well, studies may have to find out, but from the general look of things, from Congo Town to Kisi Terminal or Ferry Junction, you have lots of poor air quality because apart from these big pollution that happens around the excesses of cars, we also have households who are using fuel, charcoal and wood. All these are producing smoke, which overall contributes to the poor air quality. And if you look the context, we can see because there are again no more tree cover that could sequestrate this carbon into the from the atmosphere, it's becoming alarming. So the place is becoming hotter, the place is becoming more, difficult for people to breathe. The air quality. That's why if you now go to hospitals, you can see that there is a rise in what we call cardiovascular diseases.
But the picture is opaque and the fight is largely anemic, slaughtered on the altars of economic gains over the health and wellness of the environment and its people. As of the 2024 census, the population of Freetown had grown to over 1,347,000. The city is now home to 12% of the country's total population.
People are having breathing problems. Sometimes they think it's normal. It's not normal. It's what is happening to the environment. So these are things, if not checked, in the long term, people will have to have, lots of problems. Asthma will be on the increase. Newborn babies will suffer from these kind of illnesses. So it's a climate concern.
The effects of greenhouse emissions do not only stop at global warming and excessive heat as seen in Freetown, but also health complications, as Dr. Halkett Baker explains them.
Carbon emissions on its own is damaging, not just to the environment, which is the most common thing that's looked at. They look at the ozone layer, look at global warming, but the effect of carbon emissions on human health is quite alarming. You see, there are a number of complications to health that can be caused by these carbon emissions, inclusive of lung diseases. It could worsen already present lung diseases. For example, asthma. They don't cause asthma, but they could worsen asthma. There have been studies that have shown that they could affect pregnancy and its outcomes. For example, low birth weight, premature delivery of children, and the likes. And also, it has an effect on cardiovascular health. That is, your heart attacks, your strokes, and the rest of it.
The Global Cancer Observatory statistics of lung cancer in 2022 stood at 5.9%. 5.9% of a population for about 8.7 million is estimated at 513,300 people battling with lung cancer in the country.
The haze that clings to the skyline is not just a visual blight. It's a stark reminder of the cost of economic growth in a developing nation. From the diesel fumes of overcrowded automobile engines to the smoke from wood and charcoal fires, the air is thick with pollutants. The impact, rising health crisis, environmental degradation.
From factories and big dump sites to car and truck exhausts, the fragrance of carbon dioxide and other harmful gases is now the new oxygen. Carbon dioxide and other noxious gases have become the city's uninvited guests.
So what has been happening over time is that we have been doing both strategic coordination and operational coordination. To some extent, we can do tactical coordination, making sure that we are able to bring the stakeholders together, present the subject matter for discussion, we deliberate it, and get the way forward. Those issues that come from the coordination table at the National Disaster Management Agency every month, because we hold this meeting every last Thursday for every month. We are able to make sure that we are able to relate with the relevant institution of government and even outside government and tell them clearly the roles and responsibilities are expected to put in place to ensure that they are able to curtail. Some of them actually require policy dimension. Some require some policy enforcement. This country will have very good policies. Sometimes we encourage our colleague institution to make sure that they stretch to the extent to ensure that those policies are enforced. So that when policies are enforced, they were able to see good results. And when the results come, you can see a society that is free of sick, free of challenge, and free of other problems.
Breathing clean air is now a privilege few can afford, as smoke has colonized the once pristine skies that Pedro da Sintra once admired. This is all happening almost at a Promax level.
Now, we the ending of November, so the approach of December, we don't know how January to March.
It is difficult to predict how hot January will be if December is already this hot. Even those with electric fans in their houses do perspire a lot. Government should put more effort in tree planting as a way to minimize the rise in heat in the city.
Really, we waiting our fear. The hot skim on our winner net most time.
For those of us who are living in the WAF, it gets pretty hot at night. We often resort to leaving our doors ajar, which is a recipe for theft. We are not even in January, but the weather has become unbearably hot.
Everybody they complain about the heat.
Everyone seems to be complaining about the excessive heat these days. Some are attributing it to the cutting down of trees. The atmosphere is hot and we are sweating profusely at night.
The possibility there for let me find on people with the cutting them. Not fine.
The weather can be very hot nowadays. Government has to do something about it. Those who are in the habit of cutting down trees should stop. If you cut down a tree, you should plant another.
By day, smoke hovers like an unrelenting spectre. By night, it thickens into a suffocating blanket, choking the city's air. The damage to the ozone layer opens the door to ultraviolet rays, leaving behind scars of skin cancer, cataracts, and ecological damage. Freetown is currently experiencing devastating heat, particularly at night. The World Meteorological Agency predicts that 2024 could be the hottest year, with temperatures reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius, dethroning 2023, which was the previous hottest in recent history. The call to climate revitalization is ever deafeningly loud in the face of climate-destructive deforestation and greenhouse gas emissions. But hope is still alive. Lyndon thinks there are still ways to reduce carbon emissions in Freetown.
How do you think we can solve this or minimize CO2 emissions?
So again, that is where the nexus is between, there is this premium on development, economic development, and environmental health. This is a serious environmental health issue. First, if we want to curb emissions within the city, we have to look at the avenues. If we're looking at cars, in other countries, you see cars going for emission tests. Here, I don't think if that's happening. If it's happening, it's on paper, not in theory, because you pass throughout the street, you see vehicles polluting the environment. These vehicles should not be in the streets in the first place, but they are there. So those responsible for regulating vehicles and cars should have to up their game to make sure roadworthy cars are on the street. We also have to look at our municipal governments, the city councils, the local councils. They should be in charge of looking at how the dump sites are managed and how much illegal dump sites are there. And there should be regulation. People in their compounds do not use waste services, for instance. They just set fire to their refuse at home. All this is causing pollution. So these are all the measures. Of course, factories that are operating, if they are using thermal plants, for instance, fuel gun generators, their pollution levels should be checked. So we should have the EPA, the SLRA, the councils. These are all the people who should put regulations in place to make sure pollution is curbed, or else areas around dump sites, areas around small factories, even pedestrians walking the streets of Freetown are breathing health-damaging gases.
Some days are typically hot, while others are hotter, with average temperatures reaching 30 degrees Celsius. It's scorching hot, but it is the price a city has got to pay for environmental negligence.
In Beijing, a couple of years, I'm not entirely sure if it's still the case. They had the air was so polluted that they had to walk around with masks. So yeah, if it gets to that point, yes, you could wear masks, but to what end? You eventually have to take it off. Most of us don't own air conditioning systems, and for those who own, they don't have uninterrupted electricity. So you have to open your windows. And whatever it is that circulates outside has to go into your car, into your house. You still breathe it while you're asleep, whilst you're awake, whilst you're doing your daily activities. So there's precious little you can do to avoid exposure. You could be in your car and you would be stopped at a police stop for regular inspection, and the vehicle next to you, in front of you, would be coughing up terrible smoke. You cannot say you won't put your window down. It's impossible. You have to. So there is precious little you can do to avoid this now.
But amidst despair, hope flickers. Supported by the World Bank, the Environment Protection Agency has launched a mobile e-lab, a modest yet promising step to monitor air and water quality. It's a heavy burden to be borne by just a single white Toyota vehicle, but it is a brilliant start if the journey continues. Efforts to go green are taking root. solar-powered tricycles and bikes represent small victories in a long battle. But it is a long road with a barrage of gallops.
Freetown's battle with carbon emission and smoke reflects a broader truth about our world: the tension between development and sustainability. The people here are not just passive victims. They're mothers cooking meals from their families, entrepreneurs empowering small businesses, and drivers keeping the economy moving. Yet the price they pay in health and environmental costs are quite profound. The challenge of Freetown now, and for all of us, is to find solutions that balance progress with preservation.
Yet the journey to recovery is steep. Relocating dump sites, regulating industrial emissions, and phasing out outdated vehicles are steps the city must take to heal from these life-endangering scars. Every voyage begins with a single step. For Freetown skies to regain their former glory, bold actions must replace complacency. Until then, the battle between human neglect and nature's resilience rages on. Victor Jones, AYV News, Freetown.